I talked about Joaquin Sorolla before and how he is able to capture light in this absolutely stunning way. And I slowly want to work my way towards that. Of course, I am nowhere near this level of skill, but you have to start somewhere, and I will start today with this study of his painting, Sowing the Sail. It is gorgeous, and I'm only concentrating on a small part of the painting. If you look at it in full, you are just overwhelmed. I wouldn't know where to start. And this will be a video where I talk about what I'm doing while you can see it on the screen. Just the thoughts and the techniques I'm using with my oil pastel sticks while painting. And hopefully that is helpful to you. I am already starting with the first layer, and in that layer I try to put down all the colors I can see in a special area. And because I know that there will be something in the foreground and all of these leaves and shadows in the background, I am beginning to blend the colors as I paint. Usually I paint a much larger area before I start the blending process. But with this, one way to assure that you have somewhat defined shapes is to blend them, like I did with the pot, and the column to its side. I use a neutral glove as well as the paper stumps to blend, and I use the glove whenever I want to blend larger areas and the paper stump when there are finer details or smaller areas where I don't want the pigment to be all over the place, because with gloves, let's face it, you don't have as much control, but sometimes that's exactly the look you are going for. For example, in this column there are many different colors. There's not just gray, there is white and a bit of reddish brown and some blue, and if you want to mix them together in a way that you aren't able to tell these colors are in there, then it's good to take the glove. On the other hand, I am trying to keep the parts where the leaves will be in the foreground free. It's not working perfectly, but it's better to try to keep some parts of the paper white than to cover it all and then try to paint on top of the pigment. It can sometimes be hard to paint with sennelier on top of sennelier. You know, senneliers are known to be very, very buttery and creamy, and that's great, but they unfortunately don't stick on top of each other as well. Therefore, I try to keep some spaces where the leaves will be so that I don't have such a hard time covering it later on. I am concentrating on the tree as well as the foliage in the background, and then in the foreground I'm concentrating only on the pot or the potted plant as well as the right column, and then of course the leaves that are in the very foreground. I would never be able to achieve these details that Joaquin Sorolla, a master of his time and his style, did, and to expect that is just unrealistic. A thing I want to tell all of you: don't be too hard on yourself, don't be a perfectionist. You have to start somewhere and then you can build on the skills you have. I do have, I think, a good control over pigment. That is where I know I can cover up a lot of mistakes by controlling the pigment. I don't yet am sure with the choices of my colors, which is why oil pastels are a good medium for me. When it comes to colors, they are very bright and vivid and can be forgiving. If you choose the wrong tone of green, that's okay, because the whole picture will be very vibrant and a wrong shade of one color won't stick out that much. What this picture is lacking right now is contrast and value. That is just quite difficult for me, to be honest, with oil pastels. As I mentioned, they are very vibrant and they are colorful. In sets of oil pastel sticks, there aren't usually muted colors. All the colors you want to mute, you have to mute yourself. And if you aren't yet there with the eye for color and you don't immediately know, oh, this has to be a muted green, then you will end up with a very vibrant painting. And there is nothing wrong with that. The good thing is that you can mute it down afterwards, which is what I am trying with the dark gray. Because Sennelier is so creamy, it is difficult to darken areas without going too dark. A color I use for this is usually dark gray. I think it has a nice shadow quality. You are able to create very dark parts, but at the same time it mixes well with the already existing layer of pigment. If you didn't get a color right in the beginning or a shadow right, you can create these afterwards with the dark gray, which I quite enjoy. It's just like the watercolor indigo wash. You can go over everything afterwards and create these fake shadows, but that's something I am trying to work on, to get the shadows right from the very beginning. On some parts of the painting I managed, on others I didn't. When it comes to this very fine line of the leaves in the foreground, I use a technique I told you about once before, and that is to use the edge of the pastel stick and go over this fine line 3 times in 3 different colors. First, I use a dark green, then a lighter green, and then finally white. You very softly rub your finger over it, not even rub, you lightly touch it, and that way you will get rid of these bright pigments. It will be a blended line, but at the same time there are different colors visible, and that will give it some texture and make it look interesting. Another way would be to use a sharp pencil and create a dent in the existing pigment. That will help the pigment afterwards to stick to this surface. It will stick there easier and therefore make the fine line easier. I have another video on tiny details and how to achieve them with oil pastels. I will link it for you in the upper corner. But there I mostly talk about detail pencils and pens you can use on oil pastel. And this technique is very easy. If you use one side of your oil pastel stick for painting and then you keep the other side sharp, just in case if you need a fine line. Now, if you can't make something sharper in the foreground, another way to go about it is to blur the background. And that is what I'm doing. One of the final steps is to use a paper stump, and I am blurring the background because then in contrast the foreground will look sharper, which is what this painting needs in my opinion. And finally I'm working on some highlights and shadows on the leaves to make them pop even more. And now I achieved what I started painting for today. I studied the light in this particular part of the painting. I know it doesn't look perfect, but that's not the goal of this painting. The goal is to learn, and I got some valuable insight for my next painting. I hope you did as well. Please leave a comment if you found this helpful, or if you want to see any more specific tips maybe in the next video. Bye!